Yes, you are listening to Business Podcasting Made Easy, the influencer's formula, where you get a roadmap to instant authority and thought leadership with a podcast that you're proud of. And we are broadcasting live on the IBGR network. Today, we continue our conversation with Chris O'Byrne, best-selling author and owner of Jet Launch Publishing and publisher of over 12,000 books. And we're going to talk about misconception number 3. You need to launch your book immediately after it's published, and the only reason for a launch is to sell a lot of books. This is a misconception, and this makes it season 11, episode 44. I'm Donna Cundy of the IBGR Network, Global Radio Authority podcast expert and producer of over 14,000 podcasts, which is why I'm here.
And I'm Ben Joya, 3-time international best-selling author. Chris and his team published my 3rd book, and I'm never going back. Thank you very much. And that leads us to this fabulous quote from our friend Salman Rushdie, right? He says, "The publishing of a book is a worldwide event. The attempt to suppress a book is a worldwide event as well." So let's get serious for a moment around the importance of the freedom of the speech, the importance of sharing your message with the world. And for sake, please do it right and don't fall under the myths and misperceptions that stop most people, right? Because what we're talking about today and what's really important for you to know, if you're like me, if you're like Donna, if you're like Chris, there's an incredibly good chance that book sales will get you nowhere because you aren't going to sell a lot of books, right? Wah! No, not wah. When you actually recognize that, you realize that you can leverage your book much, much more powerfully and create much, much more success with your books rather than focusing on the sales. But keep in mind, do your launches the right way. So Chris, what's up with launches and, when to do it and, what's the right way to think about launching your book these days?
Oh, what's interesting is most people don't even know what a launch is. So many authors I've talked to, they don't even understand. Once I tell them about it, then they think, oh, well, we have to time this just right so that as soon as my book is released on Amazon, I need to have all these things going and all these people doing this, and you're trying to coordinate everything. And then, something happens, and your book doesn't get ready in time, Amazon's website is down or whatever happens. And so, one, do you need a launch to, make money and leverage your book? No, but it can be a super fantastic way to do that, to make new connections, to build an audience. So many things you can do with that launch. But again, part of that misconception is you need to do it within a certain time frame. Well, my book came out. I can't do a launch later. My book's already been out. Well, yes, you can. No, you can do many launches. You can do a launch for your print book and then your ebook and your audio book. You can even go back and do a launch from a book that was put out 5 years ago. There are no rules when it comes to this other than what is it that you are trying to gain from doing a launch and how is it going to help your audience, the people you work with.
I'm smiling. I'm smiling out loud to the listeners. I'm smiling real big on the video that we're doing together as we're here. I love that you say you can launch it more than one time, because that's the same thing, Ben. You and I've been saying that with the evergreen content of what the podcast is. That exactly. you keep reusing, recycling, repurposing, and you keep putting it in front of people because you're going to get it in front of different people each time. So that you just busted a myth in my head on book publishing. Why did I not put that together? Thank you very much.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you saying that, Donna. And allowing the myth to be busted, right? Right, because sometimes, all of us, we can get so stuck in our thinking, so stuck in the habit, right? And this is not a criticism, right? This is human nature. And it's like, hey, take a step back for a moment. And, if you're trying to process all the things we've been saying today, and you're like, well, what the hell do I actually do? Do what Chris and I recommend to my authors, right? To my book writers, is make your launch activity into 2 activities, right? I like to say 2 launches are 500% better than 1, right? Your soft launch, when the book goes up for sale, right? It's plenty of work just to get the freaking book done. I love the book, right? It's plenty of work to get it done. So get it done, celebrate, take a breath, get the book up for sale. You can let people know or not, whatever you need to do, and then do a bestseller launch, but do it 2 to 9 months after the soft launch, right? Well, Ben, why would you do such a thing? Why do you and Chris recommend this? Because in those interim 2 to 9 months, you can develop relationships with people. You can get on podcasts. Heck, you can create a podcast, right? Come do that with us at ibgr.info, right? But think about that on that day when you do a bestseller launch, I said when you do a bestseller launch, right, that you're going to have a whole tribe of people who are on your side, and you will have developed a whole bunch of relationships thanks to the book, even before you say to everybody, hey, go buy my book on this single day.
Yeah. And that whole idea of why wouldn't you do it in stages like that? Because you have your bestseller launch after that. It's brilliant. It's a little bit of like what we're talking about with repurposing the podcast, that it can be a course, that it can be these other things that you can just keep putting it out there, because what you're creating doesn't. Chris, you had said a little bit that some things might not go bad, but might be out of date, but still in 2 to 9 months, I think that's still okay to do that.
Yeah, just the idea of doing these multiple launches, I'm always thinking in terms of how people can use their book to build their business, build whatever it is they're trying to build. Even just doing 2 launches, think of how much more you're now top of mind for your audience, because you're going to have this launch and you're going to be top of mind for a little while, and then it's done, and then they're potentially going to forget about you. But if you're using the launch to build relationships, build partnerships, build an email list, do these things, you're getting some really great benefits out of that. But if you do 2 launches or 3 launches, you're multiplying that by 5 to 10 times. You're staying top of mind, and people are going to be more excited about helping you if they see that you're kind of, you're a longer term phenomenon. It's not a flash in the pan. You're going to be around longer. Just doing 2 launches shows that you are going to be around longer.
Yes. And if you're following the influencers formula, which we believe that you are, because you're listening to our voice, maybe you've been following us all the way up until now, or you could be just joining us for the very first time. If you're just joining us for the very first time because you want to learn about publishing, you probably want to check out influencersformula.com to learn a methodology to create a podcast along the way, which gets your book 80% done. So when you reach out to the publisher, when you finish up your book, you're just about there. You've got all of the hard work done. We are also here to offer support for your business podcast, your book, your publishing. And the way to do that is to contact us at ibgr.info. But I wanted to say this because, Ben, you and I have been talking about kind of this influencer in a box, which is why we call it influencersformula.com. And this is that icing on the cake. And as you are going through your podcast profit playbook that we've been creating, you're going to be creating your podcasts in 90 days. And then you're going back for another business quarter, another 13 weeks, and you've already got the marketing content. Just tweak it for your book. You launch your book, you've already got the marketing content for it to point to sales, so that when you do the second launch, it's already there. What else you want to add to that, Ben?
Oh, just that, right. So inside the book, you can point to the podcast.
Oh, yeah. Good golly, yes. All roads lead home.
Right. And then from the podcast, you can point to the book, right? And you can use your book to attract business. You can give your books away, right? You can, I know I'm back to talking about leveraging, but that's part of thinking strategically about the launch is how can you leverage your book? I mean, Chris, my favorite, one of my favorite book leveraging stories, which does involve sales, but in an unexpected way, right? Our friend and colleague, Susan, last name, I can't remember her last name at the moment, because I'm mixing all the Susans in my head, right? But she got a consulting gig, right? The company said, hey, we'd like to buy your books, right? They bought 500,000 of her books.
Wow.
500,000. So that's like one or two decision makers bought 500,000 books from her. Now, some results may vary, right? Of course, but just think about it. Even if a company hires you, right, and they buy 50 of your books, or you include 50 of your books as part of your speaking fee, right? These are books that are in the hands of an incredibly warm audience. Like we're talking hot audience. These are people, who are consuming your content, and your book is now part of the delivery of the transformation that you're offering. And it's going to literally be sitting on, 50 or 100 or 1,000 people's desks. So it's not just, hey, I got hired once, but look at all of the ripples and all of the potential future impact.
Yes. And you can use your book to get interviewed on other people's podcasts. Maybe another podcaster doesn't want to interview another podcaster, but they love interviewing authors.
Yes, they do.
You're already good behind the microphone. Yeah, lots of ways to leverage. Ben, what do we want our listeners to do around overcoming this misconception?
Right. Yeah. So just listen to what we say. Believe us, right? Like Chris has proven it. I have proven it. Donna has proven it, right? It ain't like it used to be, or it ain't like people think it used to be, right? So give yourself the freedom and the flexibility to have your business, your message, and your impact be how you want it, whether it's your book, your podcast, or both. And don't get stuck under the umbrella or the boot heel of traditional publishing.
Yeah. Chris, any final thoughts on publishing before we end this episode?
Yeah, I keep going back to the leveraging. Learn how to leverage your book, but learn how to leverage your launch as well. The launch itself can be a way to make new connections and new partnerships, to get on a podcast, to do these things.
Yep.
There are so many ways to look at this. Don't be restrained by a very narrow box.
That's a great place to end. This is the wisdom from publishing over 12,000 books with our special guest, Chris O'Byrne. This episode is the misconception number 3. You need to launch your book immediately after it's published. And the only reason for a launch is to sell a lot of books. This is Business Podcasting Made Easy. Next week, we're going to talk about other ways, the 201 formula of the podcaster's profiting playbook. I am Donna Cundy.
Hey, and I'm Ben Joya. Thank you so much. And Chris O'Byrne.
Yep, I'm Chris O'Byrne, and so glad to be part of this and to help people understand more about publishing.
We'll talk to you next time. Thanks for listening. Bye now.
Thanks, everybody.